all that, like signing paper Fridays or something.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, I just know the number. I'm like, is it Thursday? Is it Wednesday?
Yeah.
Are we on Tuesday again?
All right, Julie, whenever you are ready,
We are
go
live.
ahead.
All righty. Well, welcome everybody to Kansas City Oasis. We are Kansas City's premier alternative to faith-based communities. Good morning to all of us who are Zooming in or on Facebook Live. We're really glad that you were able to share your morning with us for at least a little chunk of your day. My name is Julie Randolph, and I will be your MC and hostess for today. For those of you who are new to Oasis, I know we have our guest speakers today who are new. I did want to just share our 5 core values with you. People are more important than beliefs. Meaning comes through making a difference. Reality is known through reason. Human hands solve human problems, and be accepting and be accepted. You guys all left in. We are here on, we're just talking about the date. March the 18th, it's Sunday, for those of you keeping track. So we have a great lineup today. Nicole Springer will be our musical guest, playing some guitar for us here and singing, I imagine. And then Barbara, or Janie, as she's also known, Williams is here. She's going to share from our own community. And Curtis Deeter is an author, and he's going to be sharing a little bit about life as an author. I don't have a ton of announcements today. We do have a birthday in our community. For those of you who know Joseph Kraft, today is his birthday. Happy birthday, Joseph. And if you guys have any other birthdays, feel free to sneak them in and I'll announce them after our music time. And with that, we are going to click straight over to Nicole. Please take us away.
Excuse me. Yes. Hello. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here today. Thank you so much, Kansas City Oasis, for the invitation. And I'm just going to kick it off with a song called Willing, and I hope you enjoy it. Bound myself, avoided like a plague or hell. Too many years of strain, I've become an old ball and chain. Standing in place, I tell myself it's not a race, but it's a race against time, and I'm losing it to my mind. Well, the truth, and it's true. And the proof, there's so much proof that, well, freedom's not mine, but I'm willing to find it. I'm willing to try. It's a matter of forgiving the enemy inside. I'm finally willing this time. I'm willing. I'm willing. I hold myself steady as I strive to make a leap of faith. It's not because I feel ready, and it's not because I'm not afraid. Too tired of being tired, can't keep up my point of view. Well, that I don't deserve better, another unfounded truth. The truth, and it's true. And the proof, well, I'm the proof that, well, freedom's not mine, but I'm willing to find it. I'm willing to try. Oh, it's a matter of forgiving the enemy inside. I'm finally willing this time. I'm willing this time. I'm willing this time. I'm willing. I'm willing. All right, well, that's the first song. And I believe I will go on to the second song this morning to open everything up. Thank you again so much, KC Oasis, for having me. It's just a real honor and privilege to be here with you today. This next one is a song that I'll be kind of debuting with a new band that I'm putting together later this fall. So it's called No Concern. I wanna say your name, then I know it's true. That's all that remains. A word is all that's left of you. My agony has drained. My apathy is proof. The facts finally change. My love is being removed. Where you are and where you'll be are no longer concern to me. Whoa, whoa, the time has finally come. Whoa, whoa, there's nothing I'll run, but you can't take away from me. Whoa, 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 I've given you love, and if that's not enough, I can recall the things that made me fall in love. I cannot hear your voice when you said there's no choice. Then you walked away. Well, that can't be saved. Oh, where you are and where you'll be, I'm no longer concerned to me. Whoa, whoa, the time has finally come. Whoa, whoa, there's something I'll run. Oh, you can't take away all the things you never gave. You never gave to me. Where you are, where you'll be, I'm no longer concerned to me. Where you are and where you'll be, I'm no longer concerned to me. Whoa, whoa, the time has finally come. Whoa, whoa, there's something I'll run. Oh, you can't take away all the things you never gave to me. And those are my first two songs.
Awesome. Oh, that is great. I love those. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So we are going to keep on going. For those of you who are awake, unfortunately, like myself, it is April. Thank you for that. And Joseph's birthday was in January, not today. Different Joe, I know, was today. I had it in my brain. It was wrong. That's all right. I'm going to keep drinking my little monster just in case I need it. And we're going to keep going. So thank you, those helpful chatters today. What is next? Let's see. We are going to have a community moment. Yay. Okay, we have our very, very own Barbara. She also goes by Janie, so it depends on where you see her. She had some warning labels for us, as well as 3 descriptors of her very own self: small, angry, and human. And that wording label would be causing trouble is not just for the young. So Janie, please share with us.
Hi, everybody, again. I'm happy to be here. I am giving this community moment to honor Earth Day, which is coming up on Thursday. There's another reason also that I'll get to. But the theme of my little talk is Heroes of Rural America. And kind of to honor Earth Day on Thursday. And to give you an example of the heroes that I'm going to talk about, an example is it's estimated that these heroes save the US cattle industry $380 million annually. And I know the cattle industry isn't earth friendly usually, but I just want to point out how powerful these heroes are. All righty, so let me continue with this. These heroes that I'm talking about help reduce disease-carrying fly populations by 95% wherever they live. And that's a major important thing, I believe. They increase forage production for farm animals. They improve pasture production. So maybe you're getting an idea of who am I talking about. They are capable of aerating the soil, which prevents water runoff, which in turn keeps fertilizers and manure from getting into nearby waterways. And I think somebody in the chat is giving a hint. And so who are these unsung heroes of rural America? Well, of course, dung beetles. Dung beetles, we've heard a lot about them, the most famous dung beetle. And I'll talk about that in a second. However, dung beetles have been around for 65 million years. It's a long time. They can be found everywhere except Antarctica. There are over 7,000 species in the world. And what I really think is cool, and you may not agree, is that they have specialized antennae that are used to pick up the scent of poop. And that is very fortunate indeed, because that is what dung beetles eat. They eat poop, but not just any poop. And forgive me if you're offended by poop, turn your sound off for a minute. They need fresh poop. They're not going to eat that dried out stuff in your yard. They're not going to eat the stuff out of your yard anyway if it's dog poop. Most of them prefer poop from herbivores or omnivores. And there are a few dung beetles who will eat carnivore poop and some mushrooms. Some will eat mushrooms and decaying plants, but that's for another time. Dung beetles find poop from herbivores very nutritious. Herbivores do not digest all their food. So when they poop, dung beetles are really attracted to the half-digested grass and the liquid that comes out, that's left. Adult dung beetles will consume the liquid, and their babies will actually eat the undigested grasses. There are 3 kinds of dung beetles. They are divided up into 3 categories. The rollers, which are the most famous. We've heard about them. We love them. We love watching videos of them, or I do. They make poop balls out of fresh poop, and they will roll them until they find a place for them to, for a good spot where they can be buried. And those balls of poop become brood balls. And one dung beetle egg will be placed in that brood ball. Just one. Most insects lay lots and lots of eggs. There are also another group, it's called the tunnelers. They pick a poop pile and they tunnel straight down through the poop pile, to make their home. And they will start bringing in the poop into their tunnel to protect their young and to feed their young. And then the third group of dung beetles are called the dwellers. And it's probably pretty obvious. They just pick a pile of poop and they live in it. All right. So, so just how do dung beetles do what I claimed earlier, all that stuff that I just listed? Well, let me tell you. Flies, as we probably know, because we've seen them buzzing around, like to lay their eggs in piles of poop. Well, if dung beetles are around, they pull the manure into the ground, eliminating the nesting grounds for flies. So then they can't breed. And they also, some of the baby dung beetles will eat the larvae of flies. All righty. Also, I said that dung beetles increase the forage production because they get rid of manure, and because cows will not graze around where they pooped. All right, how gross is that? I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. Dung beetles, like the tunnelers and the rollers, dig holes to be used by their families, but that creates an added benefit to farmers and for the world because that aerates the soil and reducing the water runoff. Also, I've said that dung beetles help with the growth of pasture grasses because once they take the manure down underground, the babies only eat about 50% of the manure. And so 50% is left for the soil to use as a fertilizer and get nutrients. And so that's why I call dung beetles the heroes of rural America. They're very important all over the world. People have acknowledged them. We know ancient Egyptians venerated beetles. Maybe it was dung beetles. You can find videos of dung beetles, the roller kind, on YouTube, which is quite hilarious. And I got started reading about dung beetles because I wrote a book, a fictional book, and I'll put the link in the chat, a fictional book about dung beetles. But I believe that before you write a book of fiction, you need to get your facts and get information first. So your story, even if it's fiction, will hold up. So I really got to appreciate and like dung beetles. Talk to your kids about dung beetles. We're always talking about mammals and animals that appeal to us, that are fluffy and furry and have cute little eyes. And dung beetles might not fit that bill, but they're very important to our environment. And I will hope that you will look up some more knowledge about dung beetles, and that you will share it with our younger generations. All right, I think that's all I've got to say, which is probably plenty enough about dung beetles. But thank you, everybody, for your time. I appreciate it.
Barbara, I've not only been entertained, but I've learned so much. I feel like I'm going to pull up my old school, like Planet Earth videos where their little beetles are like making their little round blobs. But I will absolutely, we put the link to the book in the chat. Please tell us just a tiny bit more about that book for just a second.
Well, it's a fictional book. Like I said, it's set in rural America where a family of 3 moved to a farm and they have problems. Of course, the problems being the poop left by their cows. It stinks, it's terribly smelly, and flies everywhere. So they call all these, nowadays they have businesses that will remove poop from your dog poop from your yard. Well, all those companies don't handle, in my story anyway, don't handle cow poop until they found one company that's all they do. And it's run by somebody called DB Roller, Dung Beetle Roller. And they come out, they make quick work of the mess, the problem that this family has, and that a family of dung beetles stay around to maintain the property. And that's basically the plot of the story. It has a happy ending.
Fantastic. We are going to have to look into that. So for those of you, we had a lovely chat over here. Curtis has a toddler who's very interested in poop. They talk about poop all the time. So we'll make sure that for those of us who are interested in the heroic efforts of Dung Beetles, we'll check that out. Thank you so much. Very fun.
Thank you.
All righty. So we would love for the conversation to continue, and we're going to do this with real video screens all together in a breakout room. So for those of you who are beverage drinkers, grab a refill of your beverage, and we are going to be having some breakout rooms, about a 10-minute break, and then we will come back for more music. We'll see you soon. All righty, team. Did everybody have a nice break?
We're still waiting on people.
Oh, they're still coming. They're still coming. Lisa and Kevin, you still have your always amazing backgrounds running behind the couch.
I think we're good now.
Okay, we're good. Okay. I hope you guys had a good break. Welcome back. We got to have, Barbara / Janie in our group, and we got to talk more about dung beetles. So lots of fun things there. For those of you who didn't get to talk about dung beetles, I'm very sorry. But the good news is we have more music. So Nicole, please take us away.
Absolutely. This next song is called I'll Never Be a Bitter Woman, but I hope that whatever your identity is, you can relate to it. So here we go. Talk's cheap, but I never knew words meant more to me than to you. And you'd even sworn and let down your heartbreak to trust again will be a long road to take. But one thing's for sure, I'll never be a bitter woman. No, I'll never be a bitter woman. No, I know myself more than you do. No, I won't be a bitter woman. Be a bitter woman. No, 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 no. Oh, getting by with the grief is fine as a person can, but I still need time. I'll make peace with it someday. Yeah. Despite the urge to forget about all the lessons that I could live without, I'll make use of them in some way. Like I'll never be a bitter woman. No, I'll never be a bitter woman. No, I know myself more than you do. No, I won't be a bitter woman. Be a bitter woman. No, 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 no. Ooh. I'll never be a better woman. No, I'll never be a better woman. No, I know myself more than you do. No, I won't. Believe me, no, I know I won't. I'll never be a bitter woman.
Wonderful. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, of course.
All right. And I know we've got lots of claps and things going on in the background. Thank you. Thank you. We are going to have Nicole back for one more song at the end of our program. But we are going to transition over to our amazing author and storyteller. Please come on down. Come on down.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Thank you guys for having me today. It means a lot. It's really nice to be here. I am a author of fantasy, science fiction, and horror. Um, as you can probably tell from the immediate thought of time travel with your background there. I also put together a arts and literature magazine here in Northwest Ohio. It's called Of Rust and Glass. We've published 5 magazines, online magazines. We have one more coming out this year. I also did a horror anthology with all local artists, poets, photographers, writers, both fiction and nonfiction. Sort of my little way of promoting and celebrating the talent here in the Toledo area. So those are 2 of my biggest passion projects. I do apologize in advance as I periodically look over my notes here. I'm notorious for rambling. You just ask my wife. She has to listen to my ramblings all the time. And that's the last thing I want to put you through today. So I'll try to stay a little bit focused here and not get too off track. And yeah, Nikki, thank you for inviting me. I am actually releasing my first full-length publication, Catching Lightning. It's 28 fantasy and science fiction stories. It comes out here in 9 days. So a couple Tuesdays from now. I'm really excited for that. While I've always loved writing, I still have my StarCraft fan fictions, for example, from when I was in elementary school. They're buried somewhere in all my piles of notebooks and things like that. And they're probably best left buried there. But I've always loved writing, but I haven't until recently sort of pursued it with any real professionalism. It's been sort of something that was pushed on the back burner while I was going through school, while I was trying to find a career, starting a family, things like that. But within the last few years, I started pursuing it. I started sending out short stories, getting short stories published, finishing my novel, sort of putting everything together. And this first collection, Catching Lightning, is sort of a culmination of all of those years of hard work. It is a combination of previously published stories, both in anthologies, online magazines, things like that. Some stories that were shortlisted, sending out to some of my dream publishers and them saying, we really like this, but we don't think it's for us. So I included a few of those in there. And a lot of stories that nobody's ever read before. So it's a really cool mix. It's a very eclectic mix of stories. It's got a little bit of everything. A lot of the writing I do, including my novel that's coming out this year as well, is sort of comic fantasy stuff. But there's some really serious, hard science fiction and sort of epic fantasy type stuff in this anthology as well. And while I'm absolutely giddy about this release, and I want everybody to buy at least 12 copies, because not only do books make great gifts, but they also are good for things like doorstops and stuff like that. What I really want to talk to you about is how fantasy and science fiction have changed who I am as a person and some of the things that, some of the important things that I think it's taught me. When you hear fantasy and science fiction, some of you might think of some of these epic storylines, majestic dragons, elves, and wizards, and things like that. Others might think more of, horrible acting, worse dialogue, basements much like mine with all the Funkos and the Star Wars stuff on the walls. But I also understand that some of you might not think much of the genre at all, and that's also okay. That's the beauty of writing and of stories, is there's something for everybody. And, it's such a diverse art form, like most are, that if you don't like fantasy, you don't like science fiction, that's perfectly okay. I'm sure there are stories that you do like that I might not like, and that's the diversity of literature is really a beautiful thing. But for me, at least, fantasy and sci-fi have, if nothing else, given me tools to sort of better understand this crazy, diverse world of ours. It seems sort of counterintuitive to say that making up stories about magic and robots has any real world application. But when you start to read, and more specifically, when you start to write these kinds of stories, something truly amazing starts to happen. You start to develop, real empathy. You start to take, a few steps back from your own personal biases, and you stop judging people based solely off your own experiences. And you start to realize that not everything is really as black and white as you might have thought before. There are definitely way more sides to each coin, and a lot of these issues that we talk about, a lot of these issues that we write about. And for me, my limited experience and biased worldview has sort of evolved and has sort of expanded a little bit. And a lot of these life-changing lessons that I've learned have been from writing science fiction and fantasy stuff. We're always looking for mirrors in the eyes of others, but that's just really not how anatomy works. That's not how being human works. That's not how our lives work. More often than we would like to admit, and I'm still very much guilty of this, even though I have been learning some of these things and making some of these improvements in my own life through my fiction writing. Often we judge other people from our own viewpoint. We put ourselves in their shoes instead of putting their shoes on ourselves, if that makes any sense. And I think the danger in doing this is we're still walking the same way we'd normally walk. We're still taking the same steps. We're still heading in the same direction we were before. But, I think it's really important that, we learn how to sort of take ourselves out of our judgment of others. Creating creating believable characters in fantasy and science fiction, characters that don't just read like avatars of yourself, or characters that aren't just sort of eye-rolling, gag-inducing tropes, really requires a lot of intimate time be spent with these characters. If you want to write somebody who's a little bit different than yourself, you have to go out and talk to people. You have to research. You have to really be understanding of their experiences in their life, and you have to be open to them living and them saying things that you might not agree with, that you don't quite understand, and this writing has done that for me. And I think anyone who does a lot of reading, I think, also has that highly developed skill of empathy and of really seeing things from somebody else's perspective. So, for example, in my very short piece, Goodnight Model 44X07, which is in the book, it's seriously just a little over 100 words. It's a single page. I explore a relatively common gap in understanding that I see a lot between two groups of people. In this case, this is between generations of people. I see this a lot between some of the younger generations, some of the older generations. It's something that really kind of grinds my gears, if I'm being honest. But in the story, you see model 44X07 stepping back and paving the way for the new model 44X08. And, it's a bittersweet moment. There's this understanding that this sort of passing off the torch is an inevitable thing. It's a good thing, but it's also an incredibly hard thing. There is this idea in the story that, hey, what I have to offer is inherently good, and what you have to offer is also inherently good. And it's just, again, it's just two different things, two different skill sets, two different visions, and just because they are different doesn't mean that one is better than the other. Hearing things like these enter explicit, these millennials or that dinosaur is too outdated. I hear things like this all the time, and that is just really, really dangerous. And I think we need to open real dialogue about trying to be more empathetic to different generations. A lot happens in 10 to 20 years. Technologies change, cultures evolve, new challenges arise. It's important to understand that, what my parents were doing 10, 15 years ago and what we're doing now, it's different worlds we're living in. And, I think we're too quick to judge each other and too quick to, base how we feel about different generations on what we experience. This sort of thing I found doesn't just apply to age. It applies to every aspect of our lives, sexuality, race, religion, income, everything that makes each person unique. And fantasy and science fiction have always been, in my opinion, among some of the best genres of literature at introducing people to new worlds and to new world views, and to make sure that, people can take a chance to get to know each other. You talk about writing a story about elves. You talk about, the ways that elves and dwarves and these other races in these fantasy books are sort of cast out by humans. It's a very real thing that we're showing in these made up words. And I think seeing that kind of thing on the page, definitely translates to real life. The second point I mentioned is this idea of that not everything being black and white, especially divisive issues that we oftentimes talk about on social media or talk about at holidays with our families. With the prevalence of this social media in our day-to-day lives, this has kind of gotten into be a sort of a pandemic of itself. It might not be worse than it was before, but it's definitely louder. I think, I definitely have been guilty of this in the past, but we like to make up our minds about different subjects, and we have a tendency to, refuse to hear anything else from what other people have to say. It's either exactly this way or that way. It's my way or the highway type of mentality. And, the only way we can move forward through that is by, being able to listen, being willing to listen, and stepping back and not letting our emotions take over and just be outraged by other people's viewpoints. Several stories in Catching Lightning sort of explore this. Some of them are a little bit more subtle than others, but it's something that sort of leaked in from my personal experience into some of these stories. One of them, for example, is a story called The Trial of Nabibi. I wrote Nabibi shortly after the atrocious mass shooting at Route 91 Harvest Music Festival. Somewhere near 60 people died that day, over almost 1,000 people sustained injuries, and 22,000 people left that venue just scarred and haunted forever. And unfortunately, this story is just as prevalent today as it was when I wrote it in 2017 and 2018. This sort of horrible tragedy happens far too often. And sort of what The Trial of Nabibi explores is that issue, that conversation of gun control and things like that. In The Trial of Nabibi, we meet a grief-stricken Bastion. He stands before the High Court of Magicians to testify against the violent atrocities committed by the dark wizard Nabibi. Bastion is a giftless, without an affinity for magic, and he urges the courtroom filled with wizards to place restraints on the untethered use of magic before it's too late. Many that hear his brave words take them as pleas to get rid of magic altogether, and this really isn't the case. He simply wants there to be something in place to stop people like Nabibi from using their gift to wreak mass chaos and destruction on the innocent. And in a fantasy setting, after we see a selection of the horrors the Dark Wizard committed, this request doesn't really seem unreasonable. I think being able to take that type of conversation and looking at it through a lens of fantasy, a lens of sort of make-believe, allows people to see it a little bit differently than they might before. But for me, the gun control conversation is almost as bothersome as this, the gap in understanding between generations. I don't want to get too political, even though fantasy and science fiction, they're inherently political. But writing stories like Nabibi, and another story I have in the collection called Empty Sky Over Mountain Tomb, which is a commentary on listening to health experts, which I actually wrote way before COVID started as well, which is kind of ironic. But these sort of stories have forced me to take a step back and look at these controversial issues differently than I might have before. Look at them with mindset that it doesn't have to be one way or the other, that there is common ground, there is ways that we can compromise on some of these things. So I think, I really think if more people read fantasy and science fiction, or better yet, wrote it, although, I want to mention that I don't advise you write it unless you really, really can avoid it, both because, being an author is one of the most rewarding things, but it can also be very unforgiving sometimes. And I'll also be honest that the competition is pretty stiff. So if more people write it, it's going to be even harder for us that are trying to make our lives out of it. But I don't want to dissuade you if you are a writer. But anyway, I'm convinced that we could have much more open dialogues about some of these issues, and I really wish we could do that more often. Instead of yelling back and forth across walls at each other, we could actually sit down, make the world a better, safer place, make it safer for everyone from every different background. So that got a little more serious than I had planned, but that's okay. We tend to turn to coping mechanisms for some of these more serious conversations. For me, it's always been comedy and writing, and then, fantasy and science fiction in particular. But it's always good to sort of force yourself to try to get a better grip on these things. Empathy and common ground aside, a lot of the stories in Catching Lightning are just plain fun. I think that's also very important in science fiction and fantasy. Those deeper lessons are vitally important, but I think it's also important to have a way to escape a little bit, a way to laugh, a way to go on an unexpected journey. And what better or cheaper way to temporarily travel somewhere else than with a great story? Above all else, fantasy and science fiction provide that sense of escapism that, especially lately, that we all need. We all need to take a break from our stressful day-to-day lives. Forget about the 9-to-5 grind, forget about some of our frustrations, some of the things that we wish we could have done better or could have experienced differently. It's always good to be able to dive into a story and forget about that for a little while. So in this book, I've compiled 28 of those little unexpected adventures. These are stories that I absolutely love. I was always told, if you haven't read the story you want to read, write it. So I did just that. Each one of these 28 stories will take you somewhere else. For example, I got Clark the Herald Sings, which was the first story I ever got accepted for publication. That story will show you what it's like to give up everything and take up the mantle of death. And The Pale Horse Janky and Dice with Death will also give you a snapshot of some of the wacky things that might occur once you take up that job. I got a story in there called Zyzakort Merger, which will take you on the ride of the back of a winged kaiju. It'll also introduce you to what it might be like to live in a world where seeing monsters out office windows is as commonplace as traffic jams. One of my favorite little pieces in the book is a story called The World Cries in Storm, and that story will give you hope no matter how isolated you may be feeling. It will tell you that you might feel alone today, but there are always somebody else just on the other side of the door. These little exhilarating feelings are often as important, if not more important, than the larger life lessons that this genre will teach you. So that being said, thank you again for hosting me and for listening to me sort of babble on about writing and what writing has meant to me. As you'll see, writing is a huge passion for me. And as we've said before, I'm a huge nerd who is lucky to have found even a bigger nerd and spend the rest of my life with my wife. The Lord of the Rings Funkos are hers. But fantasy and science fiction are very, very much more than the fandoms and the nerdiness and the merch. There are means of stepping back and looking at life from different, sometimes unexpected perspectives. So I think you've heard enough from me. And if you guys have any questions or comments or anything else you'd want to talk to about me with, I would love to have you.
Awesome. Curtis, thank you so much. This has been just a joy to kind of dive into the mind. Oh, clapping. We have lots of clapping going on. Thank you so much. We have tons and tons of questions. So I have kind of some of them written down, and I'll have to circle back too. But I'm so glad that you are just, we're all nerds here. You got a solid group of nerds in front of you. So you picked the right audience. Nikki, thank you for inviting Curtis. First thing I did want to mention before we dive into questions is we ran a kind of a community moment slot, but it was longer. It was in place of our main speaker, called Mortified. And is people who volunteer to share a story from their past or their present, I guess, about what was something that was crazy embarrassing. So one of our community members recommended that you come back and we do that Mortified, and you read us some of your fan fiction from when you were a kid and just unbury it and kind of show it to us. So we will do our best to reach out to you when we have that scheduled to see if you can join us again. Some people desperately needed to know, are you Star Trek or Star Wars? Which is your favorite?
If you can see, you've got some Star Wars stuff on the wall. Definitely Star Wars. I do like the main movies, but I'm also huge into like the Clone Wars, the TV show, the animation. I've got, I don't know if you can see this bookshelf right here, are all my Star Wars books.
Yeah, awesome.
So yeah, definitely Star Wars. I've always wanted to get into Star Trek, but with Star Wars, with Doctor Who, with writing, with I watched Lord of the Rings, with Harry Potter. I just don't know if I can afford another fandom.
Yeah,
I really don't. I don't know if I have time for it.
We get it. Those are, those are investments of the heart,
Yeah.
and they can judge you, but you get no judgment from me. I just love a good nerd, right? One of the questions we had from the group was, do you draw on conversations from friends or family to call back to when you're writing?
Yeah, absolutely. So something that a lot of people have probably heard of is the quote, write what you know. And I think that's often misunderstood as write just what you've experienced. The way I've always seen that is no matter what I'm writing about, no matter how much research has gone into it, no matter how much out of my comfort zone it is, I'm always going to pull stuff from my daily life. I'm always going to pull, this obscure little moment at work that I had, or this funny thing that my kid did, or this random thought I had into that. So I think that's sort of my interpretation of write what you know is really to make it genuine, really to make it feel like, to develop that voice of yours, to make it feel like it's yours, your own work, as you really have to do a lot of that.
Excellent.
Or you get the cliche details, you get, the things that everybody's read, everybody's written before, and it's just, a little bit of that is necessary, but in order to really make it come alive and make it your own, you have to be willing to be personal with it.
Yeah, and that's great. I'll kind of skip one question and go into the next and come back to it. So other than that, I think, write what you know, and you got to put, part of your personal past history knowledge into it. What other advice would you have for people who are wanting to get serious about writing, but still have a crazy hectic life, whether it's family or work or other obligations? What advice would you give to those people?
That's a really good question. And that's something that I had a hard time with for a long time. I would like to boil it down to one word, consistency.
Mhm.
It's all about consistency. From about 2018, when I first got a story accepted to now, a lot of the times, I've gone weeks, days, weeks, a couple times months without writing. And then getting back into it after that is just so incredibly difficult. You sort of find yourself, when you do it on a day-to-day basis, you find yourself, getting into, people call it flow, getting into the zone. You find it a little bit more easy to sit down when you only have 5 minutes and, write, a page or two. Not in 5 minutes, that would be crazy. I wish I could write a page or two in 5 minutes.
Wow, very impressive. Yeah.
Write a page or two, in a short period of time, as opposed to if you do it sporadically, you sit down and you got to remember, where the letters are on the keyboard. You got to remember sort of where you were at in your story that you're working on. But really, with the crazy busy schedule, the only way I find to do it is I get up early in the morning before everybody else. I work through my lunches at work. I have a couple writing apps on my phone that if something pops up, I get on there. I squeeze it in whenever I can, which means, I don't play video games nearly as much anymore. I don't watch TV as much as I used to. And I think a lot of sacrifices that you make are worth it when it's something that you're really passionate about.
Right. And then we had a couple people who are just curious a little bit about your publishing journey. So they were wondering, are you traditional or self-published? And then also just to give a little bit more information about what was that publishing journey like?
Mm-hmm. So started out with, I have a couple subscriptions to Duotrope is one of them, Submission Grinder. So a lot of the short stories that I've gotten published before, it's just a lot of sending it out, looking for calls for submissions and hopefully having something that you've written before that fits that call, or writing specifically to different contests, things like that. So that was sort of how I got started. It was like wading through thick mud. I would spend 10, 15 hours a week, sometimes just going to different websites, going to different magazines, looking at what they were looking at, reading what they were publishing, seeing where I could be a fit. That's sort of how I had that start. And that's how I've written. I have probably 30, 40 stories that I've written that I've sort of just thrown out because, they're not as good as I would like them to be. And it was really good practice to have those, but it was also, not where I wanted to take my writing career. So, you hit and miss a lot. You hope you hit occasionally, but it's more misses than anything. And I did get a book contract from an indie publisher for my novel. Um, almost 2 years ago now. And they, with COVID, they had some business changes that they went through, and their model changed dramatically. And they were doing a lot of things, originally they were very supportive of their writers. They would help with marketing, they would help with this and that. But then they became very hands off. They wanted me to pay them $500 to get 24 copies of my own book. They didn't want to do paper. A lot of things that make sense with some of the market trends with ebooks becoming more prevalent and things like that.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't a good fit anymore. So now I am self-publishing.
Awesome.
But I've had a little bit of experience already with a lot of those things with Of Rust and Glass, with publishing other people's work and working with different distribution channels and things like that. So I've learned a ton in the last 2 years. Being hands-on, and not only the writing side of things, but also the publishing side of the industry. So,
and I bet anything that makes it easier to publish stuff down the road.
It does. I wouldn't say easy, but yeah, definitely is a good tool to have.
Maybe fewer other people imposed hurdles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that sort of gives me a little bit more creative freedom, and also I can sort of put my work out there however I want instead of having a lot of restrictions.
Definitely. Yeah. You can do the ebook and the published written. So yeah. One of our community members asked, what types of things brought you into science fiction writing when you were a kid versus, let's say, historical fiction or, the other just kind of regular fictions that are out there? Why specifically science fiction?
I really think it was a matter of circumstance. We used to travel a lot between, for those of you who weren't here at the beginning of the talk, I was born in Columbia, Missouri. I now live in Ohio, Northwest Ohio. But I lived in Wisconsin for a while, lived in Illinois for a while, and we used to drive back and forth between my mom and I, between Missouri to see the family and going back home. And I had like 3 or 4 books that I would read over and over again on those drives. One of them happened to be 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I was just kind of fascinated by that book, fascinated by sort of the wonderment from the imagery. It was an illustrated version of it too, so it had bright, colorful pictures of the narwhal and Nautilus and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I really think that it was circumstance. That book was sort of in my formative years, and I sort of branched off from there. And my uncle loaned me a couple of science fiction novels, and I read those in the car, and it just sort of took off from there.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, those are always, I feel like those origin stories of what was the first book that got you into it. Those are always fun. One of our community members asked, how do you find reliable beta readers? And if you can explain to the rest of us who are lesser book nerds what a beta reader is and where do you find them?
Yeah, so beta readers are a common, especially for indie authors, people who self-publish. They're folks that read in your genre, usually, preferably, who, you can give one of your early drafts. Usually, for me, it would be 4th, 5th, 6th draft. You give it to them and they read it and they tell you, hey, your main character's name was Fred at the beginning and it's Alex by the end, or hey, there's a huge time jump here, or hey, the scene that you're writing right now is not really doing what I think you think it's doing. They can point out some of those inconsistencies and sort of help you to take a step back from your writing and see things from a reader's perspective. I have a couple Facebook writing groups that I'm in. I was in a lot of them to start off, and a lot of the much larger ones, there's some that have 20,000, 30,000 people. They're just not useful, and it's a lot of spam, and people ask the same questions over and over again. So I have 3 or 4 that have less than 200 in each of the groups, and we've all become pretty online close over the last few years. So we'll bounce stuff off of each other. I make my wife do it sometimes. She's really good at not being biased when she reads it. If there's something that I wrote that's crap, she's going to tell me it's crap. So, but yeah, a lot of those groups have been helpful. And then I got a couple people I got my bachelor's degree in creative writing at the University of Toledo. And I have a couple people left over from that experience that, we work off of each other as well.
Good. I'm going to do one more question, and then we'll have Nicole play one more song for us and kind of wrap up for the morning. One of our community members asked, how do you deal with the vulnerability of writing? Plus sometimes any harsh opinions you get from others, and how tough the industry is. How do you protect your heart?
That is a really good question. If anybody knows the answer to that, let me know, please. So I actually just got one of my first full book reviews on Barnes and Nobles by somebody who, similar to beta readers, it's like an ARC reader. They're supposed to get an advanced copy of the book and read it and give you an honest review because of all the algorithms and stuff like that. And I was very clear what my book was about and what kind of book it was. And this young woman read it and left a 1-star review because it wasn't her cup of tea and said some kind of nasty things about it.
Wow.
And I overthink things, I dwell on things, and it really sort of gave me this awful sinking feeling for about 48 hours. But really, I think the best way to deal with the harshness of the industry is to kind of ignore it. You know, I'm just not gonna look anymore, really, because that is something that I know for a fact that I'm gonna struggle with if I pay too much attention. You know, I think you have to sort of appreciate what you're doing for just doing it, and not worry about, you know, what other people might think about the final product.
Yeah, definitely. That's good advice. Thanks. And I can only imagine that's something that's gonna continue to, you know, you're gonna grow and you know, maybe get a little tougher skin as it goes. But we all are, you know, proud and sensitive of those things that we've worked really hard on. And when we get harsh criticism, you're like, oh, that was my special.
Especially when it's something that you've spent so much time with, like my book that I started in 2015, you know, and I'm now just publishing it in 2021. And the first thing that somebody says about it is like online in the public space was that. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you are doing the grind of submitting to magazines and stuff like that, you get a lot of rejection, and you sort of learn that I either have to deal with it and accept it, or you know, do something else with my time.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, we are going to transition over to Nicole. Thank you once again, Curtis, for sharing and for talking about your book and your story. One thing I would like to propose to our group is his book is only $10 online, $9.99 to be precise. If those of you who are Amazoners, you can also get the Kindle version for $2.99. So I would like to propose that those of us who are science fiction readers and or buyers of books go out and buy this book and then read the book. I know he proposed it could be like a doorstop, but I think we should maybe read it first. And then I think it'd be fun to share it to a friend, give them a 3-month deadline, and then they have to share it to another person. And we're just going to make this thing catch lightning. There we go.
I like
so,
it.
For those of you guys who are interested, let's do it. Let's order the book and read it and share it with our friends. And I'd love to have Curtis back, as if I say that as if I'm the one whose schedule is anything. I don't. But I think this is such a cool thing that you put all these short stories together. And if we can, I don't know, we'll see. We'll go from there. Who knows? Nikki's saying no, whatever that means. She'll tell us, or they'll tell us later. So we are going to have Nicole come and play some more music for us. Curtis, thank you once again, and we'll go from there.
Right on. Hey, so before I do this last song, if I can do a little bit of a plug. So again, I'm a singer-songwriter, musician here in KC. I'm about to sign on with a Nashville-based record label and producer to make a new EP. This is the biggest opportunity of my life. So if you want to follow along with me at NicoleSpringerSings.com or on Facebook and Instagram, I've got huge announcements coming up in the next few weeks, and I'd love to see you there. This is my dream. I'm a full-time musician, just trying to support my family and make my dream come true, even in a pandemic, which is slightly crazy, but here we are. So this next song is called Hell, and I released this in 2019, and I hope you enjoy it for sure. I don't need to ask how, don't need to ask why. Takes only a look for me to know I'm being tried. You're hardly a stranger, I know you too well. Surprised when that burns, when I know all about hell. And this is hell. Don't pull me in and out of hell. And I know it well. You swing me low, well, how low will you go? Is it a test of my strength? Is it something I owe? You prove power in words, you prove it in rhymes. When I think that it's over, you pull one by me every time. I feel like I'm crashing, I'm sure you can tell. I think that you like me best when I'm in your hell. And this is hell. Don't pull me in and out of hell. Oh, I know it well. Well, do you know what you do? Is it too much a part of you? I gotta get out. I can't keep my head down. My head down. In flames of your own, they must feel like home, or maybe they live inside with your bones. I gotta believe this is not about me. I don't have to dwell. This is not my hell. It's not my hell. Don't pull me in and out of your hell, though I know it well. Well, this is not my hell, though I know it well. It's not mine to dwell. Thank you, Kansas City Oasis, for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. Y'all are amazing.
Yay! Oh, thank you so much. So for those of you guys following in our chat, scroll up just a little bit. We got more information on how to follow Nicole on all of the social medias, as well as Patreon. I know she mentioned that she's got some exciting stuff coming up on Patreon. So especially for those of you who are already Patreon supporters, please tag her on as an addition so you can get all the newest, latest, greatest. With that, we are going to go ahead and depart for the day. We will see you guys next week, same place and same time here online. It'll still be April. So, hey, there we go. Not even March. We love you guys. Thank you for supporting. Oh, wait, hold on. I forgot our plug. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. We need money too, because we need you to come and we need money to do that sometimes. So we do love recurring donations. Simple Give is the platform we use for those recurring donations. You can find them on kcoasis.org. You can also text to give 816-839-7656. And that link is kcoasis.org/donate. So I will put that in the link as well. You guys are welcome to stay and hang out. And just chat with each other if you'd like to. And we will see you next week, Sunday at 11. Until then, see you.